repurpose the old phrase. This was the weekend when Elon Musk truly became president. And it was also the weekend when the marionette he's leading around by his orange nose truly became Donald J. Trumpuppet. 1 month until the inauguration, and Trumpuppet has already dug himself a bigger hole than he was in at any point during his presidency. And during his presidency, they impeached the bastard twice. God rest you, married gentlemen, let nothing you dismay, for Donald Trump, their savior, to Elon Musk must pay. It is now just 5 days, and I know that in the kaleidoscopic dementia of Trumpland, 5 days can be ancient history, but still, 5 days since Trumpuppet vowed to primary, quote, any Republican, unquote, who voted for a clean continuing resolution without an extension of the debt limit or later elimination of the debt limit. After Musk and not Trumpuppet blew up that bill, 2 days later, 170 different Republicans voted for a clean continuing resolution without an extension of the debt limit anyway. Thus, there are only two questions left. One, which scam Musk is actually running here? I'll get to that in a moment. And two, how many Republicans then gave Trumpuppet the finger? All 170 or 38, which was the number of no votes on the final bill Friday night, or just 29 because 9 of the 38 are lame ducks who vanished in 2 weeks. Even if it's just 29. Remember, Trump threatened primaries. And Trump wanted a shutdown, and Trump insisted a shutdown would be counted against Biden. They defied him anyway. They defied him because when, at the end of these segments, I refer to the lame duck presidency of Donald J. Trumpuppet, I am not looking at it solely from the pro-democracy nor the pro-Democrat point of view. The Republicans, the smarter ones, know this is true. In 2017, he held all of their futures in his cartoon-ready, three-fingered orange hands. But in 2025, with each new day that dawns, his power over them will diminish, slightly at first, and then with ever-increasing momentum. Each day, more duck. Assuming, at both extremes, that he stages no coup and that he actually lives until the year 2029, there will be 15 Republicans who will be sworn into the Senate next month who will still be there when Trump goes. There was one underreported twist of the knife here. Remember the story Musk made up that the continuing resolution included the government spending $3 billion of your money to build a new football stadium in D.C.? It was never close to the truth. And the Republicans and the Democrats wound up telling Musk and Trumpuppet to shove it anyway. After they passed the CR that Musk thought he'd killed completely, that Trump thought he had stopped, that Trump thought they would all just salute and eat whatever he had done in their hats, the Republicans went ahead with the original plan for the federal government to give control of the land surrounding RFK Stadium, which is so old the upper deck literally sways in a stiff breeze, to give that land to the District of Columbia. The Senate passed it by unanimous consent at 1 a.m. on Saturday. There are terms in the bill prohibiting any federal funds to build any stadium on that land. It just gives the district the place, which was federal property, so that a Washington team can build a stadium on if they make a deal. All the Republican senators participated in the unanimous consent. And in the House, it was approved under the guidance and shepherding of its top proponent there, Congressman James Comer. Any way you cut this, 15 Trump-defiant Republicans, or 29, or 38, or 170, or all of them on the RFK Stadium issue, after this weekend passed, you can no longer spell the word Trump without at least 9 L's. The first L, that was the own goal nomination disaster of Matt Gaetz, which as soon as it already happened today after I recorded this, will turn into the second disaster when House Republicans defied Trumpuppet again and voted to release its lack of ethics investigation into Gaetz as early as it already happened today after I recorded this. Third, he's got the continuing controversy over the Pete Hegseth nomination. And Hegseth continues to try to negotiate whether or not he is legally an alcoholic. Hegseth raged against an NBC News report that, quote, I had a drinking problem at Fox or was drunk on the air. Check the tape. Check every tape. Find the drunken. Whereupon the Midas Fellows found video of Hegseth drinking something and saying bottoms up live on Fox not quite a year ago on New Year's Eve. And if it wasn't champagne in the champagne bottle, well, good for him. He fooled everybody. Fourth, it's not like the other Trump nominees are sailing along, though, of course, Hegseth might just be sailing. Gabbard remains in trouble. Patel looks like he's keeping an eye out for other shoes dropping. As if he learned nothing from Gaetz, he is floating Alan Dershowitz to be special envoy to monitor and combat anti-Semitism. That position requires Senate confirmation, and Senate confirmation of Alan Dershowitz could bring up Dershowitz's dating history. Trump has also somewhere dug up ex-Missouri congressman and ex-auctioneer Billy Long to be commissioner of the Internal Revenue Service. The website ProPublica discovered something wrong with Long. In his resume, he advertises himself as an expert who can help you, quote, save 40% on your taxes, unquote, because he is not just Billy Long. He is Billy Long CTBA, Certified Tax and Business Advisor. This acronym turns out to carry about as much weight as a PhD from Wasamata U. As ProPublica writes, quote, the designation is offered by a small Florida firm, Excel Empire, which was established just 2 years ago and only requires attendance at a 3-day seminar. Its upcoming session is advertised at $4,997. One of its founders said this summer in a podcast that about 135 people have earned the CTBA designation, which the firm designed to help people without tax backgrounds to become tax advisors. Billy Long, CTBA, which has the C and the A from CYA in it. The fifth Trump L. Remember the whole Trump plan to get around these pesky possible problems of, sex with children and alcoholism and resume padding and past praise of Putin and Assad and generalized fascism and stupidity. The way he had to get around all that was to avoid Senate hearings for these appointees requiring confirmation through the expediency of recess appointments. Haven't heard that in a while, have you? The Senate is already scheduling the confirmation hearings. 15 Republican senators who will be there when you are gone, Trump, is a lot of senators. Sixth, that landslide and mandate he keeps claiming he won in November, the number gets smaller every week. He won based on about 225,000 total votes in the swing states, and his national margin is at last check at just 1.47%. The irony, of course, here is that if he just shut up about it, it would have looked like a landslide and a mandate, even if he'd only won by 1 vote, because he was the first Republican not named Bush to win the popular vote since 1984. Add to these the new L's. Number 7, the disastrous and now unshakable image that Musk is president, and Trumpuppet is just one of his many impotent employees. This is a self-own of biblical proportions. Musk's primary skill is making it, whatever it is, about Musk. His secondary skill is making other people's work look like it was something he did. His tertiary skill is making people mistakenly believe he is beloved, especially among the youths. Well, how beloved are billionaires and especially CEOs at the moment? Oddly enough, media companies owned by billionaires and run by CEOs did not give this next story a lot of play. But Emerson polled on the shooting of the insurance boss Brian Thompson, around the corner from me, and the number of Americans aged 18 to 29 who found his assassination acceptable or somewhat acceptable was 41%. 4 out of 10 adults under the age of 30, and their strongest reaction to this was meh. This might be a poor time for a guy who became famous as a businessman pirate to link himself to another businessman pirate. And the number, I think, in the poll is low, in part because it is a majority of those with an opinion. 41% said acceptable or somewhat acceptable. Another 40% of the kiddos found it unacceptable, which means that the number who found it acceptable, somewhat acceptable, or did not have an opinion totals to 60%. 60%. 6 out of 10 young Americans will not say it was unacceptable to shoot the boss of the healthcare company. And even that number is probably low. I think it's a reasonable guess. I don't know about you, but I would be reluctant to tell a pollster or to tell almost anybody that any murder was acceptable. It's not just that 41% of people under 30 say this was acceptable or somewhat acceptable. It's that they said it out loud. And maybe even more startling for Musk and Trumpuppet is that the overall number of those of all ages in this poll who found it not acceptable was 68%. I think the word just is applicable here. Just 68%. That is 3 in 10 who responded, sure, or whatever, or sure, whatever. That's not good for CEOs. The whole connection to Musk was bad enough that Trump went in front of the Hitler Youth Convention yesterday in Arizona. And by the way, 12% of young Republicans found the Thompson murder, quote, acceptable, unquote. It's bad enough, this Trump-Musk linkage that developed over the weekend. President Musk, that Trump twice tried to make a joke about Musk being the real president. And the first time, and listen for this, the response from the audience of young Republicans was crickets.
No, he's not going to be president, that I can tell you. And I'm safe. You know why? He can't be. He wasn't born in this country.
He almost said, please clap. Which leads us to Trump's 8th L. Did you hear anything else from that speech in Arizona yesterday? I mean, apart from the content I will play for you next, which is Trump doubling down on the anti-vax crusade, even sideshow Bob Kennedy himself has been smart enough to try to tamp down. Then Trump inadvertently implying that Kennedy himself is autistic. Just listen to Trump talk. The election was 49 days ago. He has barely left Mar-a-Lago since, let alone kept up the pace of the campaign. Why is he slurring his words? Why are the non-slurred words thick with effort? Why does he sound this bad?
And to be our next Secretary of Health and Human Services, I decided, look, something's going on here. When you look at, like, autism from 25 years ago, and you look at it now, something's going on, and I nominated Robert F. Kennedy, Jr.
In Arizona, Trump, I think that's Trump, doesn't sound like Trump. In Arizona, Trump again floated his latest possible war. First, it was invading Mexico. Then it was annexing Canada. Now it is reclaiming the Panama Canal from Panama because he still thinks it's 1977 or maybe 1907 when most Americans still knew what the Panama Canal was. But the Panama Canal, where the biggest beef seems to be that there are a couple of Hong Kong-based companies managing the ports at either end? Or could there be more? Oh, wait, there's always more. Again, ProPublica, re-upping over the weekend its article from June 3rd, 2019. And as explanation, the headline will suffice. Quote, Trump companies accused of tax evasion in Panama. In the latest chapter in ongoing litigation, the private equity fund that bought what used to be called the Trump Ocean Club claims the Trump entities pocketed money that should have gone to the Panamanian government. Revenge is a dish which people of taste prefer to eat cold. But Trump has no taste. And of course, thanks to Trump's string of stepped-upon rakes and humiliating L's and self-demotions to Musk's assistant, what Trump is eating right now, that's not revenge. Which brings us back to what the hell Musk was doing in the middle of this. Did you see his political skill and gifts play out over the weekend? No, I didn't either. Nobody did. Musk made a fool of himself. And whether he or Trumpuppet realize it now, sooner rather than later, Trump will realize. We'll see that light bulb flicker slowly on above his hair. Just what a power-hungry lunatic Musk really is. And how, wherever Trump is at the moment, there is only room for one power-hungry lunatic. Democratic Representatives Rose DeLauro and Jim McGovern explained why Musk waded into this, what turned out to be quicksand. You need some help over there, Elon? Sorry, my hands are busy. As McGovern wrote, the original funding bill that he killed included that's called an outbound investment provision, which would limit and screen U.S. money flowing to China. That would have made it easier to keep cutting-edge AI and quantum computing tech, as well as jobs in America. But Elon had a problem. His second largest market is China. He's building huge factories there. His bottom line depends on staying in China's good graces. He wants to build an AI data center there, too, which could endanger U.S. security. He's been bending over backwards to ingratiate himself with Chinese leaders. So what did Elon do? He tanked the whole thing, telling Trump to oppose it and threatening to primary anyone who voted yes. And to cover his tracks, he claimed it was about spending. What did Trump get out of all this? Nothing. But President Musk got what he wanted, the ability to sell out the U.S. so he could make money in China. End quote. What Congressman DeLauro, the top Dem on appropriations, did was to, I believe, be the first to call him President Musk, and to go on to write that Musk might have tanked the bill to protect, quote, extensive investments in China in key sectors, and his personal ties with Chinese Communist Party leadership, and calls into question the real reason for Musk's opposition to the original funding deal. Well, Musk went crazier than he would have if the ketamine was late. He replied that DeLauro, quote, needs to be expelled from Congress, which is not a thing. Maybe it is in South Africa, Elon. Musk got into and lost a fight with an older congresswoman who dyes her hair purple and then wears green eyeglasses. She managed to pin the president tag on the donkey and tie him to China and make Trump doubt him and make MAGA wonder what Musk's connections to China really are. Then, Senator Mark Wayne Mullen, come on, Mark or Wayne, just choose one, goober. Senator Mark Quayne Mullen, who clearly did not get the memo that the Trump-Musk partnership had nearly killed them all, Senator Mark Quayne Mullen went on Fox yesterday furious that Democrats were complaining about Musk because he was just a businessman. He didn't see no Democrats complaining about the businesses of Joe and Hunter Biden. I'm wondering if anybody has yet told Mark Quayne that he just compared Musk and the Bidens as businessmen. Mark Twain, if your internet doesn't work today, you know what happened. And if that still ain't enough, a weekend in which Trump hurt himself and Musk hurt himself, Musk also began the weekend tying himself to German neo-Nazis. On Friday, Musk, who has already tried to shove the Fuhrer out of the American picture and who's already gotten into bed with England's lizard person fascist Nigel Farage, reposted a video from a German neo-Nazi, and Musk added, "Only the AfD can save Germany." The AfD is the anti-immigrant political party there, one of the worst in Europe, if not the whole world, that has been designated a suspected extremist organization by the German judiciary, whose own leader quit 2 years ago because the AfD had gotten a little too Third Reichy even for his tastes. This is not the first time Musk has sympathized with the AfD, and face it, if you're German and you're called neo-Nazis, you can probably drop the neo. Good weekend for President Musk. I suspect the Trumpuppet will figuratively off him, and soon, but of course not before a pack of Republicans made the mistake of standing way too close to Musk's horse on the charge. Rand Paul said Musk should be the new Speaker of the House. And Marjorie Taylor Greene roared along into the valley of death along with Senator Love Thy Neighbor. And now they have both found out what happens when you stand too close to the back of a horse. Incidentally, I completely endorse making Musk Speaker of the House. First, just what the one-vote majority Republicans need in the House. A strung-out political amateur running their show. Secondly, sure, make him the Speaker. Then the Republicans will do to him what they always do to their speakers. Torture him for a while and then vote him out in 6 months. Also of interest here, remember my piece from last week and the expansion of it that I did here on the podcast about how if MSNBC has any vision, they can just stay the course, weather the storm, and what with the Washington Post and Twitter and CNN and the LA Times and almost everybody else completely abandoning news for people who like democracy, MSNBC could have a monopoly in the entire field. All forms of news media. Just like we did back when I breathed life into the network in 2004 and 2005. They could own the entirety of the resistance if they just had a little vision. They don't have a little vision. The new MSNBC boss now says he wants to be on better terms with Republicans. Sir, the only terms the Republicans want from MSNBC are surrender terms. That's next. This is Countdown.
This is Countdown with Keith Olbermann.
Postscripts to the news. Some headlines, some updates, some snark. Still ahead, of course, worse persons. And if you're wondering why that rumored reel of Trump apprentice terrible outtakes has never been leaked by the producer, you can stop wondering. Just call him Almost Ambassador Producer. Next. This is the new Countdown podcast, and these are the places where there's news. Dateline, Secaucus, New Jersey. I know MSNBC is not still in Secaucus, New Jersey. We moved out in 2007. I helped to pack. But it's useful to remember its roots. And its roots are next to the London Fog Factory Discount Warehouse. And they live down to that every damn year. A week ago, I wrote for Variety and expanded upon it here that after Trump won and MSNBC's audience cratered and its Comcast owners wanted to get so much distance from it, they spun it off into a new company that they didn't even bother to give a name to and are still referring to as SpinCo, that there was an easy answer to the seemingly existential question, what does MSNBC do now? Well, I said, do nothing. Oh, fire the Morning Joe team of Mika Brzezinski and her husband Neville Chamberlain. You can't have appeasers on the air. For that matter, you can't have untalented, gutless, disloyal, hated appeasers. Not if you're going to take the God-given business gift of a monopoly for anti-Trump, anti-dictatorship, pro-democracy coverage for the 48.6% of the country that voted against him. I mean, the Washington Post went fascist. The New York Times is both siding itself into complicit silence. CNN is now the Scott Jennings network. Elon Musk spent $44 billion to turn Twitter into pro-Nazi, pro-Russia, pro-China, pro-Trump dribble. The field is empty, except for all the money that is still sitting there. More money than all of the right-wing news outlets can make combined. Grab it. It's all yours. They're not going to grab it. No sooner had my Variety article published before the two good media reporters out there, Lachlan Cartwright and Oliver Darcy, had each published source stories indicating that Comcast stuffed suit Mark Lazarus, now in charge of SpinCo and thus in charge of MSNBC, was already ready to join Joe Scarborough in reciting the "I, for one, welcome our insect overlords" gag from The Simpsons. Cartwright reported that no, Lazarus is not going to hire this bozo Jennings to co-anchor with Maddow, nor shut down the other liberal, albeit sleepy, primetime shows. He has merely told people that the public perception of MSNBC as a place where Republicans can't get a fair shake needs to be changed. One, who the F thinks Republicans need a fair shake? They're trying to overthrow representative government in this country. We don't give them a fair shake. We chase them out. Also, I guess Mr. Lazarus never saw Joe and Mika pimping for Trump in 2015 and 2016. That was enough of a fair shake to last a couple centuries. And he didn't see them last month when they announced they'd been down to Mar-a-Lago to help the Trumpuppet hide, boxes of top-secret documents in his toilet or whatever they were doing down there. I forget, honestly. Anyway, Oliver Darcy, in his newsletter Status, went into a little bit more detail. He writes, quote, Lazarus would like MSNBC to be on better terms with Republicans and has indicated to people in private conversations over the past month that he would like the network to incorporate more GOP voices on its air. I know the word is incorporate, but we're talking about a corporation, so incorporate sounded better. You know, I've heard that phrasing before. Work to incorporate more GOP. When NBC put new producers on my show in 2010, they told me I should incorporate more GOP voices. Like, maybe giving equal time to them after each of my special comments. Or in 2015, when Andy Lack of NBC asked me to return to MSNBC, only he wanted me to do a nightly show without any commentaries and to have a conservative co-host. No comments, no bomb throwing, as Lack put it. But back to today, nearly a decade later, and to again quote Darcy, in freewheeling conversations, the SpinCo boss has indicated to people that he does not want bomb throwing from hosts and commentators, which might unnecessarily alienate Republicans and spawn bad press, I'm told. While primetime is made up of progressive opinion programming, the thinking is that the more news-oriented dayside lineup could perhaps incorporate more conservative voices into the mix. I don't fully understand this. Scarborough and Katie Tur aren't conservative enough. Scarborough is on for 4 goddamned hours a day. They are at MSNBC right now trying to kill off the 11 p.m. show, and that would mean an 8 o'clock show, a 9 o'clock show, and a 10 o'clock show, which would mean there would not be 4 hours of liberal hosts on MSNBC, but there would be 4 hours of Scarborough and 2 more of Tur. To resume Mr. Darcy, quote, Lazarus's view seems to be that the network should welcome all sorts of voices with different perspectives, while still maintaining a liberal bent amongst talent so as not to alienate the channel's core viewership. We're going to have all sorts of voices? You're going to have this guy, Luigi Mangione, come on? Talk about corporate business? If you want all sorts of voices with different perspectives, how about a guy who thinks we should kill all of them? Well, that's what MAGA is, only substitute democracy for corporations in that equation. Back to the article. Executives like Lazarus really want more MAGA-friendly voices on the air. There are already times when MSNBC programs will successfully book MAGA figures for interviews. Ari Melber has hosted a number of such people over the year, including Peter Navarro and Stephen Miller. But Melber thoroughly prepares for such conversations and, in a respectful manner, interrogates their positions, not allowing them to get away with spreading falsehoods on his air. I should note as an aside that those programs, no matter how well done Melber does them, diminish MSNBC's reputation among its own viewership. Those shows are not more highly rated than the average MSNBC show. They're lower rated, and they therefore affect as lead-ins the entirety of the MSNBC primetime lineup. So if somebody is sitting there at Spinco thinking they're going to make more money or as much money in some way by doing this, they obviously have not even looked at the data that is presented to them. And the data is like in 3-digit totals. It's not complicated math. Let's see. 110,000 viewers versus 210,000 viewers. Which is more? Why was it more? Back to Darcy. It's unlikely that when Lazarus talks of inviting more Republicans on the air that he has that style of no-holds-bar, confrontational interviews in mind. Instead, he's likely thinking of a model similar to CNBC's, the business news channel, sister to MSNBC, regularly features a mix of Republican and Democratic lawmakers on the air. CNBC is a conservative channel. In fact, there are moments at which CNBC is a fascist money-grubbing channel. When Trump went to the New York Stock Exchange last week, was it? Jim Cramer wet his pants with excitement. This is a network that has Joe Kernan on every day. Joe Kernan, who slammed Frank Luntz during the campaign for criticizing Trump over the Haitians eating pets lie that Trump ran on. Kernan defended Trump lying about that. And by the way, Kernan versus Luntz, toupees at 20 paces. Quote, as Lazarus thinks about how he would like to tweak MSNBC's programming, he would be wise to think twice about meddling too much. While MSNBC is facing ratings lows post-elections, the strategy has largely led to strong viewership numbers over the years. You're welcome! In contrast, CNN's softening of its Trump coverage and its integration of dishonest MAGA voices into its programming under Warner Bros. Discovery boss David Zaslav, and by the way, this would be Zaz and Laz running these two networks, has alienated viewers. Instead of seeing audience gains, CNN has seen its audience shrink. I have to commend Oliver Darcy, who I met once. We had a very nice lunch and a long conversation, and he's very polite, and he's very circumspect. And what he has said is something I would say, only I would phrase it, you moron, you're going to drive away everybody who watches and not attract anybody who doesn't watch. But back to the more dignified Oliver Darcy. If Lazarus ends up tampering with the coverage too much, he very much risks an outcome like that for MSNBC. The fanciful notion that Republicans will switch over from Fox News if only other channels would cater more to them is never borne out in reality, no matter how much the executive class might wish it so. What is more likely to happen is loyal viewers will feel betrayed and turn off the channel. In other words, not only would it be editorially misguided for Lazarus to be too heavy-handed in pushing Republicans on MSNBC's air, but such a move could also adversely impact the financials of the crown jewel of his cable empire. Once again, you're welcome! And that would simply be bad for business. Darcy is right, of course. I am right, of course. It's a monopoly. But even Oliver Darcy misses the real point. Back in 2009, when we only profited about $250 million a year, after losing something like that every year for the first 10 years of the network's existence, the chairman of GE was still ready to shut the network off. And I mean, in the middle of the words I was saying, because Fox had retaliated against me by criticizing him personally. And his mommy, the Bill O'Reilly fan, called him up and yelled at him. And what was $250 million in profits to the sixth biggest corporation in the world and its chairman, a mama's boy? Now, the MSNBC profit today is closer to $1 billion a year, and sure, that seems like a lot. But in the year ending September 30th, the parent corporation Comcast reported a gross profit of $45.254 billion. Would Comcast like to keep the $1 billion that MSNBC makes for it? Of course it would. Would it miss that $1 billion? Of course it wouldn't. Would it be happy to buy itself a quiet stalemate with Trump and the fascists and a dictatorship at a cost of a watered-down MSNBC making a profit of only $500 million or even less, or, I don't know, breaking even? On the assumption that the old coot Olbermann is right and MSNBC will still be a liberal monopoly, even if it isn't that liberal? Even if Scarborough is pumping and pimping Trump every day? I mean, if half the audience stays, that's a win, or at least a draw, isn't it? Of course, democracy dies in draws. And the feasibility of MSNBC depends on you watching it. So if they do this, if they let Mark Lazarus water the product down or drown it, which is the true watering down, the solution is simple. Do what you did when CNN went fascist. Stop watching the crap. Listen to, I don't know, news podcasts. I'm not suggesting any particular news podcasts, mind you. Still ahead of us on Countdown for each and every one of us, this time of year summons a cherished and gauzed-covered memory. Happy reunions, the wonder of childhood, the joy of giving, or, in my case, falling off a goddamned cliff in Malibu, California, while you are filming a fast food commercial for chicken. Pro tip, if they ever ask you, can you climb that rock outcropping while wearing brand new goddamn Florsheim shoes? Tell them no, no, no. Keith just avoids breaking his neck again, or a Christmas story. Next in Things I Promised Not to Tell. First, believe it or not, there are still more new idiots to talk about. The daily roundup of the miscreants, morons, and Dunning-Kruger effect specimens who constitute today's other worst persons in the world. The bronze, worse. You'll remember Martin Shkreli. He's the hedge fund guy and noted pine cone, the leading example of what happens when you see a Trump or a Musk coming and you stop him in time. Shkreli was the asshole who, for his firm, obtained the manufacturing license for the drug Daraprim, an anti-AIDS and anti-parasitic drug used to treat fungus-caused pneumonia. He raised the price to insurance companies of Daraprim from $13.50 a pill to $750 a pill. It was an increase of 56 times the price. He did this because he could. There were, however, other things he could not do. Well, sir, they indicted him on 2 federal counts of securities fraud. 2 years later, he was sentenced to 7 years in prison, a fine of more than $7 million, and then he lost a civil case over Daraprim, $65 million more in damages. They let him out 2 years early, supposedly for good behavior, but probably because they just couldn't stand him in there anymore. So the other day, the Virginia Congressman Don Bayer tweeted about the Musk disaster. The richest man in the world says he wants to shut down the government, forcing millions of American workers, including our troops, to go without pay through the holidays. Republicans are following his orders. This is insane. To which Martin Shkreli, who has apparently had his mobile devices returned to him after his time in the clink, Martin Shkreli writes, "We can vote you out, too. Don't worry, baby." B-E-B-E. Baby. As many people replied, Shkreli is a convicted felon. How can he vote? Who's this we? Well, by statute, his voting rights are supposed to be restored upon release from prison in Pennsylvania, and he's reportedly living in New York, and Representative Bayer serves Virginia. So, who is this wee baby? On the other hand, if you were to suffer a paper cut while waiting to vote, and you needed a Band-Aid, Mr. Shkreli, before going in to cast that vote, you would be charged by anybody who knew you $2 billion for that Band-Aid. So, maybe not, baby. The runner-up, Worser, he was such a bad man that we learned how to pronounce that stupid name of his. The Worser, your good old city of New York, Eric, chosen by God, Adams, mayor. The independent news site The City and other news outlets here report that on May 28, 2023, Samuel Williams was riding his motorbike on the University Heights Bridge that connects Manhattan and the Bronx. Suddenly, a car swerved in front of him. Williams, 36 and the father of a 6-year-old daughter, was thrown from the bike. He died a day later. Turns out, the car that killed him was an unmarked New York police vehicle involved in a police pursuit. Such vehicles have killed about a dozen New Yorkers in the last 2 years. This was on Memorial Day 2023. By the 4th of July, the family Williams left behind received the following letter from the city on behalf of our $11 billion police department. Addressed to the late Mr. Williams, it read, quote, "Our records indicate that your vehicle damaged city property on the above date. City of New York is seeking reimbursement for these damages." The city sent them a bill for $3,429.23 for killing Dad. Just like in the Terry Gilliam movie, Brazil, where the dictatorship identifies the wrong man, kidnaps him, tortures him, kills him, then sends his widow a bill for its services. Only, this is run by Eric Adams, not by Terry Gilliam. The city's comptroller found out about this from news reports. He's outraged. He's written the Williams family a letter of apology. He's withdrawn the city's demand for money. He said the police did notify his office of the damage, but never that the man on the bike caused the damage by being killed by an NYPD officer, because that's not what the NYPD does. Waiting for the statement of outrage from the NYPD Detectives Union about how not paying this bill makes them look bad. $11 billion a year we in New York pay for these guys, and they do a nice slow-motion perp walk and think they're good at it. For 23 years after 9/11, during which 23 New York police officers were killed on 9/11, all the first-line responders in this city have been revered and lionized and thanked, and in recent years, fetishized. They've gotten anything they've wanted in terms of the budget, until we're paying $11 billion for a police department that could not cover a stolen manhole cover. And they have burned through all of that goodwill. It is 1970 again in New York City. Eric Adams, mayor. But the winner, the worst, television producer Mark Burnett. You may remember him from such hits as having helped to ruin television. But more likely you'll remember him and his association with Trump and the stories that circulated before the 2016 and 2020 elections, though less before this past one, that as the boss of Trump's old show, The Apprentice, it was he, Mark Burnett, who had access to all the outtakes, in which Trump may have said things that would have alienated even his most loyal, rabid, insane supporters, or which may have included something very untoward and long-rumored. Or not. Tom Arnold seemed to think or was the correct answer. The tapes might have been erased, they might have been lost, they might have been exculpatory. If it's Trump, they might have been really boring and just him talking about himself. Or, quote, statement from President Donald J. Trump. Elon Musk, proprietor. It is my great honor to appoint Mark Burnett as the special envoy to the United Kingdom. With a distinguished career in television production and business, Mark brings a unique blend of diplomatic acumen and international recognition to this important role. I'm trying to read it as Trump says. Mark is known for creating and producing some of the biggest shows in television. History including Survivor Shark, Tank the Voice, and most notably apprentice. He is the former chairman of MGM, and he has won 13 Emmy Awards. Mark Burnett, special envoy and keeper of the Trump flame, and maybe the apocryphal Trump tape. Wait a minute. Why did Trump appoint him to a post with that word in it? Mark Burnett, envoy? Huh. Today's worst person? Why that of all words?
The number one story on the countdown, and my favorite topic, me and things I promised not to tell. And it was this time of year in 1996 when my agent called me at ESPN. There's an ad agency in Santa Monica. They just called me. Would you like to do 2 commercials for Boston Market? I answered with profound indifference. Okay, would you like to do 2 commercials for Boston Market for $250,000? I believe my next words were, well, I can't do them today, but sure. They faxed me the scripts. They're actually pretty funny. Very well done. I think you'll like them. I believe my next words were, if I don't have to kill anybody in them, call them back and say yes and get the money. Since the idea was these ads would run on sports telecasts, most of them on ESPN, my yes got back to management at ESPN pretty quickly. You can't do these, one of the executives explained dismissively. We don't let anybody do commercials. I laughed. Every one of us has done the This Is SportsCenter commercials. Some of us have written the This Is SportsCenter commercials. You don't even give us days off for making them, let alone give us money. This is money I don't have to ask you for. The executive shook his head. Those aren't commercials. Those are promotional announcements. They're in your contract. Nobody here does commercials. I said, Chris Berman has done a beer commercial in 3 out of the last 5 Super Bowls. My commercial is just for food. Well, he's Berman. I pointed out I went to high school with him, and I was the star of their most popular program, a little thing called SportsCenter. TV Guide had just named us one of the top 10 shows on TV. Shows, not sports shows. Us and Seinfeld. Sorry. Well, now I got a little angry, which never happened to me at ESPN, and I went to my ace in the hole. My contract expires in like 10 months, and you know I intend to leave. And during those 10 months, you're going to pay me about $260,000. So Boston Market is going to pay me $250,000 for 2 days' work instead of 10 months' work. Plus, they're going to take me out first class to L.A. for a couple of days, and they're probably going to do some radio spots, and I'll make another $25,000. So you're giving me a choice? Make, say, $275,000 in like 5 days for them, or make $260,000 here between now and next September when I'm planning on leaving anyway. If you make me choose between those two, which do you expect me to choose? The executive coughed. We'll get back to you. An hour later, he got back to me by phone. Okay, we see your point, but there's still 2 problems. We can't just let everybody do commercials. I said, well, why don't you just let anybody who went to the high school that Berman and I went to do commercials? He did not laugh at that. Well, how about only your regular weekday SportsCenter anchors get to do commercials? There was a grunt and a maybe. Then we got to the gist of the real problem. Here's the real problem. People on your show, they'll be resentful. And I said, why will they be resentful? Because the production assistants are expecting that they're going to get their own commercials too? And I said, how about this? The day I'm out there actually shooting the commercial, I will get Boston Market to cater dinner for the show staff, even if I have to pay for it myself. There was a long silence. Would management be included in that? And can we get all the side dishes too? I swear to God. So, off I flew at the beginning of December during a winter that had gone frigid in October in Bristol, Connecticut. And the next thing I knew, I was on the beach in Malibu at Leo Carrillo State Park. The crew is complaining because it is raining lightly and only about 55 degrees. To me, fresh from the hinterlands and having not been back to L.A. since I had moved out in 1992, it's like I'm in Tahiti. And my agent was right. The scripts were funny and original. They were a send-up of the old Calvin Klein Obsession perfume commercials. There are two extremely thin models, and they are filmed writhing in frustration on the beach, on the big rock outcroppings at Leo Carrillo State Park. She is supposed to say, "Emptiness. How can I fill this empty void of emptiness?" They are in black and white. But I emerge from behind a rock or wherever. I'm in color. They are in black and white. And I say, when they say they don't know what to do about this emptiness, I say, eat something. I then sell the sandwich. Then it cuts to a shot of me walking them down the beach with my arm over each of their shoulders, telling them eating is a good thing and who's wearing cologne or who likes sports or other stupid things like that. For $250,000. Well, we start this at 8 a.m., and the producer and the director, John, say to me and the two models and the crew, look, this rain is just going to get heavier as the day goes on. So what we want to do is not take a break for lunch. We'll just shoot until like 2 p.m., and then you can have lunch, or you can take your lunch with you, and you'll all get paid for a full day. And everybody agrees. The actress agrees, and she swears as she agrees. The actress is named Una. Una is from Chicago, and it will soon prove Una swears more than a longshoreman. This blanking cold can blank my blanking blank. To be fair, Una and the guy are dressed in Calvin Klein rags, and they are there, and they are from there, and they are freezing, while I am wearing a production company brand new suit and shoes, and to me it feels like it's Tahiti. We take a couple of hours where we do all the shots where I emerge from behind the rocks or go around the rocks or over the rocks or I look over the rocks. And the director finally says, okay, we got 5 good options. Let's set up for the walk down the beach with your arms around each other's shoulders. By now, it's noon or 12:30, and as they move the cameras and the rain starts to move from a mist to like a light rain, 2 prop guys bring out rakes. And I'm sitting with the crew, and I've been asking them questions all morning in between takes about how this is all being arranged and made and lit. And I say, rakes? What do you need rakes for in a commercial? And they say, you'll see. And then each time me and Una and the guy walk down the beach and the director says, cut, we go back to the starting point. And now out come 2 stagehands with rakes, and they rake the sand on the beach smooth. And I say, oh, footprints. So each time I walk down this damp beach with the rain just a little harder than it was the take before in my brand new dress shoes, what I'm basically doing is polishing the soles of these brand new shoes on damp sand. I mean, by the time the director John says we are done, these soles of these shoes are so shiny I could go ice skating in these shoes. And John comes over and he says, listen, we got another half an hour. Can we go back and try a new way for you to appear on the rocks? I mean, can you climb rocks at all? And I say, yeah, actually, I'm surprisingly good at it. You wouldn't think so, but I can climb rocks. And he points to one rock outcropping on the beach. Maybe it's 18, 20 feet high. And he says, try to climb up that and go as high as you can. If there's nothing that'll support you, we'll forget it. And I try, and sure enough, I get up near the top, and there is a perfect little shelf in the rock that I can comfortably stand on. And the director points the camera up, and he says, oh, damn, the angle's too tough. I can't swing the camera down fast enough for when you say eat something so I can refocus on the models. It won't work. Is there anything lower on the rock where you could stand? Can you come down at all? And I said, I think so. I think I can come down a little bit. Well, little did I know. Sure enough, maybe 9-10 feet from the beach, up in the sky, there is another little foothold on this rock outcropping. It is not big enough for me to put both my feet on it, but I say, if you don't mind me holding on to the rock as I say eat something, I can do it from here. And the director says, okay, let's try it. And I climb down the rock, and he's moving the camera, and I put my left foot on this flat part, which is 9 or 10 feet up from the beach, and for a couple of seconds, everything is fine. I'm good. And that's when I feel that my left shoe, my brand new left shoe, straight from the Florsheim catalog, bright and shiny, and now having been polished by 4 hours of walking up and down on a wet beach, complete with 2 guys there to rake the beach and make sure it is as shiny as it possibly can be, My left shoe, slipperier than a diamond, is now moving of its own accord. I'm holding. I'm doing a good rock climbing job, but the shoe is not holding. Hey, I say with some alarm, I'm about to fall off. I hit the sand no more than 5 seconds later, so that's about a 16-foot drop from my head to the beach. And for weeks, for years, still to this day, it has amazed me more than anything else that happened. It has amazed me how much went through my mind before I crashed. In fact, before I actually fell. I know I did a quick height calculation. 15, 16 feet. I recognized that the outcropping was so vertical that I was unlikely to hit any of the rock on the way down. But just the same, I remembered that the rocks continued under the sand, see? I took 2 years of geology, and this was going to be a hard landing. More amazingly than all that, though, I had taken judo as a kid. I hated every minute of judo. 1965, 1966, so 26 and 27 years before we shot this commercial. I was in the studio, the judo studio in White Plains, New York, the day of the 1965 Northeast blackout. And the only happy memory of the entire judo experience I had was when our instructor, Bob DeRocher, locked us in the dojo that had been converted from a store that had a front door that was set in several feet from the street so they could put display cases up. And now it's pitch black, so he went out and got his Volkswagen Carmen Ghia, drove it up over the sidewalk into that set-in entryway of this converted storefront. He put his high beams on. He flooded the dojo with enough light that we kids could change out of our judo stuff and back into our regular clothes and wait for our parents to come get us. He did a great job. I didn't like the judo so much, but his blackout operations practice was superb. So now, with all of this having gone through my head in a second, I began to fall, and everything else from that year of once-a-week judo classes comes back to me. Relax as you drop. The more of your body that hits, the less you'll get hurt. Hands protect the head. Drop like a sack of sand. I did not hit the sand, per se. I kind of splattered on my left side. Like, swap. As I rolled over onto my back and took a breath and sat up, of all people, Una was the first to race over to me. You want some blanket tea? I said, no thanks. Let me see if I'm dead. The grips tried to help me to my feet, but I felt some very sharp pain which suggested we should slow down. The problem was, though, even if I needed an ambulance, there was no way to get one down to where we were shooting, as that rock outcropping that I had just fallen from suggested. I like to call it a cliff every now and again. Leo Carrillo State Park had a real cliff in it and a flight of stairs. 100 steps, 200 steps up to Pacific Coast Highway and a park. Sure enough, I was able to stand, but I couldn't move easily. Everything hurt. So the two biggest members of the crew let me drape my arms over their shoulders, exactly the way I had draped my arms over their shoulders of the models during the beach shot. I stopped for a second. Hey, Ona, you sure you don't want to franken carry me up the stairs? She said with genuine sincerity, now that's blanking funny. Seemed to me like it took about a month to get up those stairs. I assumed there would be an ambulance waiting by this point. Instead, there was a park ranger. This is a state park. I have to see you first. Then I have to call the fire department. I said, well, this pain on my side here, this feels like fire, but I don't think it's actually fire. He called the fire department. They showed up. They assessed me. They called the ambulance. At some point, probably when I was being half dragged up the steps, something happened on the impact side. If I now tried to lower my left arm from way above my head, I got severe shooting, burning pain from my left armpit to about my left knee. Cleverly, I figured out not to do that. Keep your left arm above your head, and it won't hurt. I used the restroom in the ranger station. There was no blood, so no kidney damage. I'm okay. It does, however, hurt, and something could be broken. Now I go back outside, my arm above my head, like I'm signaling for a cab on the streets of New York City. And the ambulance shows up, and the EMTs tell me to get on their gurney. And I said, I can't. I can't lower my arm unless I want excruciating pain. I can't move my arm. I have to stay in this position looking like a flamenco dancer. But I said, listen, can you lock the wheels on this gurney? And they said, sure we can. Of course we can. And I said, just lock the wheels, and I'll just back up onto the end of it, and I'll fall backwards. And it worked. And so with my left arm still extended over my head, they loaded me into the ambulance. Apparently, when I fell from that rock, or cliff, as I call it, it looked like I had been shot. 50, 60 people on a commercial crew. The shooting day is over. They have missed lunch. There is a very nice catered lunch sitting there. And they told me later that everybody was so disturbed by what happened to me that only 3 people even took something to go. And no, the director was not filming as I fell, sadly. So we hit every pothole on Pacific Coast Highway on the trip from the beach to the hospital. I called my agent from my cell phone. She laughed. I called ESPN, actually to check on the catered dinner. Oh, what's new? Oh, I fell off a cliff shooting the commercial. They laughed. And I'm lying there in the emergency room waiting for x-rays when my cell phone rings again. And I reach into my left pocket, and I had the phone halfway to my ear when I realized my left side does not hurt anymore. At all. It does not hurt at all. Well, that was a quick recovery. I sat up. My left side felt fine. In fact, it felt great. And a nurse came over and suggested I should lie back down again. I said, why? Somehow I got better on the trip from all the potholes and just lying here. In fact, I feel great. Did you guys remove my left leg while I wasn't looking? Did you replace it with the left leg that I had when I was 12? Because I could hop back to Connecticut on my left leg right now. Just cancel the flight. She laughed. She said, no. What I was feeling would be the morphine they gave me so they could twist me around and take the x-rays they needed. And I said, please, never, ever give me any more of that ever again. Thank you. My judo flashback, as it turned out, had done the job. I had broken nothing. The ER doctor complimented me on my fall, and he said I probably had 6 or 8 different sprains on my left side. It would hurt, but it would keep getting better, and I'd be able to make my flight home the day after next. He was completely right, although I now found, 25 years later, that it's beginning to hurt like I just fell off the cliff. Anyway, I went back to the hotel. I ate well. I slept well. I managed to walk around with the help of a cane, and I went back for day 2 of the commercial shoot. This one is in a mansion in Pasadena, a room teeming full of Unas lying on the floor. They're photographed through chandeliers. They're lazy rich kids who also need to be told to eat something. I arrived and walked into applause from the crew, and I delivered a well-rehearsed line. And now for my next trick, which is when the director, John, came over and apologized, and he said he thought this entry into shot for me would be way easier. What I had to do was lie on the floor, then sit up and deliver the line, eat something. If you can sit up, he said, that is. If you can't, we can do something else. Can you sit up? And I thought about it, and I rubbed my lower back, and I said, based on the day so far, yeah, I could, but probably only 6 or 7 times. And I said, while I can sit up, it's clear to me one of those bad sprains was in the muscles somewhere of my lower back. And if I try to lay back down, I lose control. I'll just crash back to the floor. That actually happened getting out of bed this morning. So after each take, the same 2 guys who had walked me up the stairs after I fell at the beach gently held my arms and shoulders and lowered me back to lying on the floor. We got what we needed. I went back to the hotel. I had dinner with some friends. The next day I was a little sore, but perfectly fine to get back on the plane east. And sure enough, only time ever I had a west to east tailwind. The flight from LAX to Newark took 3 hours and 48 minutes. We traversed the country like a dart shot from a gun or an Olbermann falling from a rock outcropping. Oh, by the way, the commercial was an immediate success, unlike any that Boston Market had ever done before. In those days, they were packed each night for dinner at every location, selling half chickens and full meals with potatoes and salads. And they were getting an average of $12 out of every customer. The rest of the day, the place was empty. The idea behind my commercials, they were designed to bring in a lunch crowd, a sandwich and a soda and a bag of chips for $4. Soon they were swamped at lunchtime. Boston Market ordered 3 more commercials, these to be shot in a studio in New York. They offered me $50,000 a day. An entire new career vista was opening in front of me. I was, for a week or two in early 1997, the most successful male commercial actor in the country. We shot those 3 spots. I interrupted a grunge concert to shout, "Eat something" at the band, and then I got carried off by the crowd in a mosh pit. And I interrupted a Romeo soap opera surgeon coming on to his nurse by rising from the operating table to shout, "Eat something." And then we did something with ball players at the stadium on Randall's Island, and I remember nothing of that because, unlike the first 2, they never edited the film because that's when it happened. Their equivalent of falling off the cliff. I will confess it had not occurred to me. Then again, I did not own Boston Market. I did not work for their marketing department. I did not run the ad agency they employed. But none of them anticipated it either. After the first few weeks of giddy glee about the lunch crowds I had brought them, somebody noticed something unfortunate and unexpected. Basically, for every $4 lunch they were now selling, they were selling 1 fewer $12 dinner. They had not gained any new customers. They had just managed to get their customers to each spend $8 less. These very well-made, very memorable commercials worked very, very well. And the problem with that was each time they did work, it cost Boston Market $8. By the end of 1997, Boston Market was something like $900 million in debt. It had filed for bankruptcy, and it had been taken over by McDonald's. On the other hand, I got my money, and in the 25 years plus since, Boston Market has not once used a celebrity endorser to try to sell their food. Oh, and there was one other positive outcome from my header off that cliff that December so many Decembers ago. The ad agency actually received the award. I did not, so I can't quote the title of it for you. I don't know which group gave it to us, but the Eat Something campaign, it actually won an award because apparently my shouting "Eat Something" at Una and the others, that somehow cut through to some victims of some eating disorders. What I was told was we got an award from a National Bulimia Association. I've done all the damage I can do here. Thank you for listening. Everybody got a lot of sandwiches. I became a vegetarian. Brian Ray and John Philip Chanel, the musical directors of Countdown, arranged, produced, and performed most of our music. Mr. Chanel handled orchestration and keyboards. Mr. Ray was on the guitars, bass, and drums. It was produced by TKO Brothers. Our satirical and pithy musical comments are by the best baseball stadium organist ever, Nancy Faust. The sports music is the Olbermann theme from ESPN2, written by Mitch Warren Davis, courtesy of ESPN Inc. Other music arranged and performed by the group No Horns Allowed. My announcer today was my friend John Dean, and I should have let him read the whole script. Everything else was, as ever, my fault. That's Countdown for today. Just 1,490 days until the scheduled end of the lame duck presidency of Trump, probably. And it's maybe Matt Gaetz stars in the remake of Back to School Day. The next scheduled countdown is next Monday, because it's Christmas, damn it. As always, bulletins as the news warrants. Till next time, for my co-producers, Ted and Kit. Kit, say something. Kit is reluctant to make his podcast debut. Kitty cat. Kit, hi. No. He just looks at me like, what are you doing? Till next time, I'm Keith Olbermann. Good morning, good afternoon, good night, good luck, and ho, ho, ho. Oh, now he's talking. And Stevie's in here, too. You have something to say? You want to eat? Tell me. You want something to eat? Okay. Ted? Kit, you want something to eat? All right, Stevie's speaking on behalf of the group. Oh, Ted just gave me a little sniff here. What, Ted? This is called letting the mic open and leaving the tape roll. Ted, say something. Here. Speak into the microphone like that. No? You got nothing to say? You sure? You can't see this at home, but Stevie is being attacked by a young 6-month-old Kit, who, though half her size, likes to grab her by the throat with his front legs. Just as a sign of love. Anyway, Merry Christmas from the whole gang. Rose, who will have nothing to do with this, is outside waiting for food. Oh, Kit likes to make a stretchy noise. Did you hear that? Hopefully see it just before the new year. All right, let's get something to eat.